Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I want to thank you for making the time to attend the webinar. We've really got just a fantastic webinar here for you today. The title is 4 Proven Ways to Combat Margin Pressure Using Language AI. And we're really, really lucky to be here with our friends at Persado, who are partnering with us to present this webinar. My name is Mike Kaput. I am the Chief Content Officer here at Marketing AI Institute. And that means that basically I work on growing our audience of next-gen marketers, and I work closely with partners like Persado to make AI actionable and approachable for marketers. So today I actually have the pleasure of being joined by 2 language AI experts from Persado. Persado, if you don't know, is an AI platform that generates language to motivate every individual to engage and act. And you're going to hear a lot more about Persado as we go through the presentation. So from Persado, I have with me Alex Olison, Head of Vertical Strategy, and Brianna O'Hara, Director of Product Marketing. Alex, Brianna, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
So I want to mention before we dive in, I'm going to say a few words about Marketing AI Institute, our work, and kind of what we're trying to achieve with webinars like this. Before I go any further, I want to remind attendees, if you have any type of question or comment, please use the chat and the Q&A features of the Zoom webinar to ask those questions. We have Kathy McPhillips on our team behind the scenes fielding those questions. We'll have Q&A at the end of this presentation, so we'll get to as many of those questions as we can. So this is an interesting stat on the slide here that really sums up why we do what we do at Marketing AI Institute. So we believe that 80% of what marketers do every single day will be intelligently automated by artificial intelligence to some degree in the next 3 to 5 years. And what that means is that marketers must begin taking steps to understand and apply artificial intelligence right now in their work. And that's necessary in order to benefit your career and your company. And if Alex, you can move us forward real quick. So that's why our mission is to make AI approachable and actionable. You do not need to be a machine learning engineer or a data scientist to understand, pilot, and scale AI in your organization. You just need to understand what AI is capable of and determine use cases for your particular job or company. If you could move us forward real quick. So at Marketing AI Institute, we do that by producing a ton of different resources. I would encourage you to check them all out at our website, marketingaiinstitute.com. And I want to call out one in particular that we worked on in partnership with Persado. It's called the AI for CMOs report, the real world playbook for digital transformation. And it teaches CMOs and marketing leaders how to adopt and scale AI. You can get a free copy at aiforcmos.com. And last but not least, I want to encourage you to check out our other webinars. They are all hosted at the link that you see on your screen. Our webinars are all designed to help you in a number of ways succeed with artificial intelligence across different marketing and sales contexts. And there's plenty of them with Persado in there and other great partners. So please check them out. Now, without further ado, Alex and Brianna, please take it away for us.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you to everybody who's in the audience. We're really excited about the content that we have prepared for you today. We're going to be talking about 4 ways in which companies can use AI to combat margin pressure. And we'll talk at length about the 4 solutions, but I do want to set some context around what the persistent challenges are that leaders are facing in the macroeconomic environment that we find ourselves in today. So the 3 main challenges are what Gartner refers to as a triple squeeze of compounding pressures are a combination of persistent high inflation and an increase in cost of living, a scarce and expensive talent market, and persistent global supply chain constraints. We're going to be giving a couple of examples of ways in which artificial intelligence, namely Persado's Motivation AI platform, has been used by Persado's clients to address each one of these challenges, which are often intertwined. In terms of inflation, we're going to be talking about ways in which companies that sell goods and services can communicate with their audience in a way that is sensitive to the consumer's opinion of how far their dollar goes. We'll be talking about emotions that consumers feel around spending, saving, investing, and borrowing their money, with examples across major industries that Persado covers, including retail, financial services, and travel, as well as others. We'll be talking about ways in which companies can engage with their workforce to increase overall employee satisfaction and retention, accelerate recruitment efforts, and deliver the right kind of messaging to our talented workforces at the right time. We're also going to be talking about the margin pressures that companies feel, and the need to be able to reach an audience effectively, and we'll show how marketers are actually being squeezed for budgets more so than they have been in the last couple of years, and how Motivation AI is a great way to combat potentially shrinking marketing budgets. In terms of the top self-reported areas of priority that CEOs have responded to Gartner saying that they are focused on, these are really the challenges and the priorities that we'll be focusing on today. So if you take a look at the 3 examples or 3 top survey responses that CEOs gave for their strategic priorities, it's figuring out a way to maintain growth, understanding what tech investments they should be making, and then workforce related challenges. Workforce, I'll call out as being one that has really increased in priority year over year, which is why we'll be talking specifically about some of the use cases that Persado has worked on with our clients around workforce recruitment and talent retention. We're going to be dividing the presentation into 4 main areas where AI, specifically Motivation AI, has been proven to address these 4 main areas. We're going to start with revenue growth. We'll then talk about cost management, talent constraints, and then finally fostering customer loyalty. We'll be giving specific examples and case studies of ways in which Persado has worked with our clients to address each one of these specific areas of executive priority. So with that, Brianna, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about Persado a bit and then introduce our first priority area.
Thanks, Alex, and welcome to the webinar, guys. So here, it just goes without saying that realizing the potential of high-performing communication requires close collaboration between business units and the parts of the business that stand on the front lines through customer engagement. Depending on the exact structure of your organization, the business units tend to be accountable for growing revenue or building customer value through their products and services. And then marketing, most of the time, they develop the vast majority of communications and assets for those customer engagements. So the visuals and the messages that are being shared. Now, there are some variations depending on the business units. The service arm may run its own communication, or it may work with marketing to run campaigns that highlight those options of products and services. However, the mutual goal of the business units and the marketing departments tends to be aligned. Everyone wants to grow those customer relationships and grow the business. And the key to doing that is motivating your customers to take a specific action. And at Persado, that is what we do. If you could go to the next slide for me, Alex. So Persado is a motivation AI platform that unlocks new sources of value by ensuring that you use the right words at every customer interaction. The Persado platform combines natural language generation, machine learning, and experimental design, powered by the world's largest language knowledge base to transform words into growth levers for the business. And that allows brands to speak to each individual like they knew them personally. With more than 100 million messages delivered to date, Persado customers have realized 41% average lift rates in conversions across customer engagement channels and more than $1.5 billion in incremental revenue. That's those more authentic and differentiated brand moments across the board. One thing that we always say that's impressive about Persado is the diversity of brands that we work with. We've worked with established brands such as JP Morgan Chase and other big name banks. We work with digital only financial institutions like Ally Bank in the US. And we work with the emerging fintech startups like RappiCard and RappiPay. That's a subsidiary of the South American e-commerce company Rappi. In fact, when RappiCard, a digital innovator themselves, wanted to aggressively acquire new customers in the Mexican market, they turned to us and now say about that launch that Persado was the best lever of growth they ever had. We also work with businesses that are a multitude of brands or family of brands, like Tapestry, for example. They are a collection of brands that include Kate Spade, Stuart Weitzman, and others. And these clients speak of the deep relationships that we've built with those global industry leaders who joined the movement. Because they trust our AI capabilities to increase engagement of their customers and build brand equity to ultimately generate tremendous value for their business. By delivering innovative technology and leading edge solutions, we've fostered deep relationships with global industry leaders like these because they trust our capabilities to increase that engagement and brand equity. Not only have we developed strong relationships with these partners, but we've also been recognized on multiple occasions as a top AI company and also for our world-changing ideas. Persado was named the Fortune 50's companies leading the AI revolution for our distinguished and data-backed ability to marry that brand voice and compliance standards. And one more note on Persado, here's just an example of the array of language elements our motivation AI platform is trained to identify and measure. The technology identifies each of these factors and then identifies the element that contain those factors and even calculates which of the elements were responsible for a customer engaging with a message. That's so that we can optimize those elements in the final version that's delivered. The elements that we optimize for are narratives. So that's the general storyline that a campaign is telling. It's usually grounded in a core brand message or a narrative that defines the value prop for the customer. In this example, the narrative is the one of self. Emotion is the second point of emphasis, and that's just the emotional context that language evokes in the message that you're giving to the customer. The third is descriptive language. That's part of the message that's pretty straightforward and describes a product or service or action you wanted them to take. And the language used in a call to action could be an example of that too. How it's formatted, such as maybe capital letters, or if it's separated by punctuation or emojis, and then how it's positioned, both from the perspective of syntax and the order of words in the sentence. So as well as maybe where the sentence is located in that overall message. All of these elements combine to allow us in our work with clients to leverage motivation for the biggest impact. Alex, I'll turn it over to you to start our first priority.
Awesome. Very interesting, Brianna. And, I think one of my favorite things here with this example and some of the case studies that we'll be showing is how differently this bank can communicate with both Adam as well as Natalie to make sure that they are tailoring their message, to their preferences, to the emotions that they like to feel, and what it is that they as consumers seek to accomplish. having a long-standing relationship with their bank. And that's really a motivating driver behind how AI and Persado in specific contribute to revenue growth. On average, for every $100 million of attributable revenue to marketing, Persado is driving for our clients about $40 million or 40% revenue uplift. And that comes from a variety of different places, but primarily it's understanding the motivation that gets a consumer excited and interested and loyal in the brands that they choose to do business with. So as I pivot now to the first area that we're going to be covering, there's a really interesting paradox, in our opinion, around how businesses and executives need to figure out a way to deliver consistent revenue growth in an environment where it may not be readily apparent where that revenue growth will come from. We talked a little bit about at the beginning how inflationary pressures and supply chain constraints were both two headwinds that executives and marketers face in order to figure out ways to deliver consistent growth. And the three main priorities for delivering revenue growth, as you can see here on the screen, are developing innovative delivery systems and channels for interacting with customers. And that, in our observation, takes on a couple of different flavors. It can be the recent advent of buy online, pick up in store, or click and collect, or curbside pickup, which has really separated a lot of leading retailers from their peers who weren't necessarily as bullish in adopting that type of order fulfillment. Persado actually works very extensively in helping retailers communicate both the availability and the efficacy of those order delivery methods, as well as new systems for interacting with customers. The second priority is around increasing sales of existing products and services to existing customer segments. We're going to talk a lot about how it's between 5 and 25 times cheaper to retain a loyal customer than it is to attract and convert a new one. And then the final priority that we'll be talking about is an effective use of data to develop new products and services, which we as marketers will have a high degree of confidence will deliver enhanced experience to our customer base as well as to our employees. And this is a particular challenge in our observation in an environment where consumers are starting to self-report that their discretionary spend is on the decline. So a combination of interest rates being high, which not only affects consumers who are looking to spend money or take out a mortgage on their house, but it also affects companies who use debt and borrowing as a way to grow. So we as marketers need to figure out a way to communicate with our customer base in a way that is sensitive to them feeling the pressure of an increase in cost of living and responding by reducing their discretionary spend. One of the trends that Persado has taken a look at, which we'll cover in more detail as we go on, is that based on how much inflation exists in the market, the emotions that consumers feel around spending their money actually changes. So in periods such as the one that we find ourselves in now, with an increased year-over-year cost of living and high inflation, consumers respond more positively to gentle nudges or personal narratives around accomplishment and encouragement. Whereas if you were to wind the clock back to a period of time like the beginning of 2021, the set of emotions that consumers responded to best rallied around exuberance and excitement. And Persado has actually mapped millions of words and phrases back to those primary emotions. And the work that Brianna and myself and the rest of the Persado team do with Persado's clients is figuring out which words and phrases to use to evoke the emotions that consumers are telling us as marketers they want to feel when they are being spoken to by the brands that they do business with. And another vector to look at in terms of driving revenue growth are the demographics of the consumer base that you're marketing to as brands. What you see here is that discretionary spending intentions between low, middle, and high income households are actually starting to diverge more so than they have in the past couple of years. One of the most exciting projects that I've worked on with Persado customers is understanding if the emotions that prime versus subprime borrowers feel is different when it pertains to their money. And the answer is a resounding yes. And we as marketers have not only the opportunity, but I would even argue we have the obligation to make sure that we are communicating with our customer base sensitive to how it is that they make, spend, invest, and save their money. And Brianna, I'm going to turn it over to you in a second to show our first of a couple of case studies. But I think this is such an interesting opportunity to capture sentiment based on what's happening to our consumer base and the economy around them. So Brianna, I'll turn it over to you to start talking through some case studies.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. The two case studies I have here today are just from retail examples, but the first on the screen here is from a Fortune 500 retailer who wanted to optimize the language of their cart abandonment email. So this is one of their most valuable trigger campaigns. They used Persado to optimize the subject line, headline, subheader, CTA text, and formatting, and then the subhead before the product list. And then they ran an experiment with 16 variations of this message. The winning variant we discovered drove 15% more engagement, 26% more orders, and $404,000 more in revenue. Some insights just to highlight here: within the email body, we saw the CTA text and formatting symbol were the most important factors in driving that engagement. And out of the 4 CTAs that we tested, view cart was the most effective. Within the subject line, we see the descriptive language contributed 41% more to engagement, with the item in your cart is single item mention, which outperformed this closet essential, this, and this style. The emojis also help drive increased engagement, with the 3 asterisks or stars outperforming no emojis, a smile, and a circle. Finally, complete your order was also critical in contributing to overall performance. Other phrases such as open ASAP, which indicated urgency, high, which indicated intimacy, and it's your lucky day, which obviously indicated luck, they were not as effective at driving overall engagement. One revenue calculation that the abandoned cart analysis period was May 2019 to January 2020, which is an 8-month window, and we extrapolated that to a 12-month period, so thus getting to that 404 number. The second one, if you'll go to the next one for me, this is another retail example of optimizing the language of their browse abandonment email. They used us to optimize the subject line, the subheader, the headline text, CTA, and subheader again before that product list. And we ran 2 experiments with just 8 email body variants and 16 subject line variants. The winning variant drove 16.3% more opens, 38.1% more engagement, almost 30% more orders and 18.5% more revenue in total. Couple insights to highlight on this experiment was in the email body, the headline and the CTA format were the most important factors in driving engagement. The winning headline was "Get This Style," and that evoked encouragement as an emotion, and whereas the control featured curiosity. Enclosing the CTA in a border was actually more effective than underlining the text. And finally, the word "view," which was an observational CTA, was actually more effective than "shop," which was an acquisition CTA. In the subject line, was effective at grabbing attention, but it had a low impact on the overall engagement. And the second phrase contributed 85% to engagement. So this is calling your name, which featured exclusivity, had an emphasis via the capitalization and directional language. It performed better than the other options that we had tested, like "remember that thing you were looking at," curiosity performed the worst. We think this will be your new favorite featured fascination, and you are invited to pick up where you left off. Featured exclusivity. They fared better, but weren't as powerful overall as the winning exclusivity phrase was. For this revenue calculation, the abandoned cart analysis period was from January 21st to July 31st, so just about 6 months. And we were able to drive $84,000, which we extrapolated to that 12-month period again, getting us to the $169,000 incremental revenue number.
Awesome. Thanks, Brianna. I think those are two great examples of case studies. I think it's so interesting how, seemingly very nominal changes between the control and the optimized creative can really make such a big difference in terms of engagement, in terms of whether or not a shopper actually converts. And, I love how, Persado, we're testing so many different variants using experimental design, using natural language processing to figure out what's the right thing to say to consumers. And, I'll remind everybody in the audience that the optimized creative is personalized based on the intended audience and their internet, history and their demographics and what it is that they want to feel when they're interacting with the brand. So just to wrap this section before we move on to our second priority, we have talked a little bit about running seasonal and special campaigns, new product launches, inventory clearance, retargeting, and win backs. We showed a couple examples from this list, but this is, Persado's, in my opinion, bread and butter when it comes to helping brands grow their business and attract and convert new customers. The second priority we want to talk about is around cost management. We talked about this at the beginning of the hour, but there is a prevailing environment where executives need to figure out a way to combat rising costs, to combat rising interest rates, and CFOs, as you can see with the quote here on the screen, are trying to figure out ways in which they can cut costs while the inputs that go into their business are rising in terms of price. One area that we believe is well positioned to not only be broadcast as a revenue grower, but can really be spun as a cost saver is digital marketing and artificial intelligence. As you can see here on the screen, CMOs and CFOs are self-reporting that marketing has now fallen to about 6.4% of revenue as it pertains to an overall company's budget, and that's down from 11% of revenue in the prior year. So this presents all of us as marketers with the challenge of doing everything that Brianna said in the prior section to attract a new audience, but figuring out a way to do it in a manner that is cost conscious and effective in terms of delivery to market. In fact, Persado customers have self-reported that they learn things about their audience 50 times, that's 50 times, faster using multivariable experimentation and AI than they would have authoring copy on their own or doing A/B testing. Another way that Persado and Motivation AI contribute directly to brands' bottom line has to do with our unique approach to integrating with a data ingestion layer, as well as content distribution and measurement and attribution. What you're taking a look at here is Persado's place in the MarTech stack, a couple of our marquee integrations with customer data platforms, delivery platforms, as well as measurement and attribution. Persado not only contributes to an overall increase in revenue, but we have been proven in discussions with our clients to increase the return on investment for the other parts of the MarTech stack that you can see here on this screen. And the main cost saver, in our opinion, working with Persado's clients is figuring out a way to deliver fresh content sensitive to consumer preferences faster than just relying on creative teams alone. So Brianna, I'm going to turn it back over to you to talk about how Persado has contributed to cost savings. This is a great example you're going to give around call center and IVR language optimization.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. So here we have an example of Persado customer who used Motivation AI to help with the campaigns on its servicing arm. In particular, they wanted to drive cost reductions for customer service. So we ran multiple campaigns under this broader umbrella, and these are two examples. The first one here on the left was a campaign to encourage customers that called into the call center to instead download the app and use the brand's use that app to kind of deal with their service issues. So when the customer called in, the script they heard from the IVR, the automated voice response system, included an option to bypass the call center service queue and instead receive a link to download the app. You can see that the IVR script could include language about the specific issue that people needed help with. So we can help them make a payment or register your product for renewal or a subscription and so on. The campaign on the right in the same series prompted callers to respond to a customer satisfaction survey. The collective impact of these campaigns we ran saved the brand $11 million in call center costs and then led to 750,000 fewer calls into the service line. Let's dig down one more level and look at the motivation impact on specific language elements. Thank you for that. In this specific instance, the descriptive language in the IVR prompt specifying the steps people needed to take had the biggest influence on getting people to receive the app, and that represented about 60% of the total uplift above the impact that control message would have. Having said that, about 40% of the impact came from the emotions that were embedded in the language. The excitement-driven opener, "We have good news," and the fascination language of, "We recommend this as your quickest option," played an important role as well. Click on one more for me there. Here's another cost management example that is a little bit more of a hybrid with the revenue growth challenge that we were talking about earlier. This is I guess there's a tradition of offloading excess inventory by discounting it. So in different ways, whether that's to give items away as gifts for people or making minimum purchases, giving coupons, or for some industries, maybe to sell like excess stock in their outlet locations. All common approaches and perhaps necessary for some businesses, but Persado had also found from working with customers that the right message can actually boost engagement to a point that you wouldn't need to reduce or give that discount. In this real life example, the retailer we worked with was having a fall promotion on sweaters, and we were able to drive impact through the motivation centered messaging combined with an attractive value prop and offer. And this example, we actually didn't have to discount the sweaters as severely. If we take a look at the iPhone on the left, you see here the human authored control copy for an email campaign on sweaters. They were offering 40% in the control message. And then what we see on the Persado side of things was actually a 30% discount. So less of a discount to the consumer. That contributed to a 44% uplift in revenue, 28% uplift in orders, and a 13% uplift in engagement. You'll go to the next slide for me. Here, Persado customers were able to see what insights are available to them in real time and what precise message elements are driving engagement and providing these uplift figures that we talked about in the prior slide. So if we take a look at the slide here, there's insights that are available to Persado customers, like we're able to deconstruct this message into those various components we talked about and show specifically what elements of the message are contributing in a positive or negative way for that response. To take a couple examples from this message, the emotions of exclusivity and intimacy in the subject line of that email with the phrase "from us to you" contributed to a 20% uplift in terms of that incremental engagement and conversion number. Showing the emotion of newness in the text of the email in that purple box in the middle of the screen, that contributed to a 3% uplift in engagement. And then what this allows for our customers to do is conduct multiple or multivariable experiments that on average are 50 times more effective at generating insights and optimizing content over A/B testing.
Awesome. Thank you, Brianna. Two great examples of ways in which Persado not only helps customers grow their revenue, but preserve margin as well. So a couple other use cases we didn't get a chance to cover here, but encouraging self-service and in-app adoption for customer service, as well as enrolling in auto pay, subscription-based purchases, paperless billing, automatic delivery, and prescription refills are all big cost savers for our clients. I do see a question here. How do we know the contribution of each word, for instance, latest drop plus 3%? So before I go on to the next section, I will cover how Persado deconstructs messages into their various parts. So this is really rooted in experimental design and how Persado approaches creating 16 variants and then testing them against each other. So Persado's artificial intelligence will actually take a look at control copy. It will generate every possible combination of words and phrases that have been used in the past that the AI believes are on brand and would be effective in market, chooses the top 16 that would perform best in market, and then recommends those to the copy and creative teams to be served. As part of the experimental process, different elements of each message are tested against each other to see, does the AI believe that the phrase "from us to you" will perform better than an alternative? And then those are all tested against a control. So Persado is not only creating the content, but it is also looking at each individual character and messaging element to see what's driving clicks, what are consumers responding to best, and then choosing the optimum combination and serving that one into market. So I want to move on to our third priority around talent constraints. So just a little bit of context here. You know, there has been a significant increase in employee turnover. And the top three reasons for employees leaving their job are leadership that appears to be checked out or uncaring, unsustainable work performance expectations, and a lack of career development and advancement potential. So a lot of the same principles that apply to marketing to consumers to try to attract and convert them as brand loyalists can also apply to attracting talent, as well as increasing overall employee engagement. So Brianna, you've got a great case study around recruitment with a public agency. And I would love to hear more about that over the next couple of slides.
Perfect. So earlier this year, Persado was approached by a public service organization that wanted to experiment with new approaches to recruitment. Like many organizations, this one had scores of roles to fill, and they had seen a drop in their ability to attract those high potential candidates. So this organization already had a contract with a digital agency. We were they were the first resource for web design and digital marketing, and then we collaborated with them to develop this social media campaign to raise the profile of the organization as an employer. We wanted to motivate those potential candidates to take the next step, to look at job postings and ideally submit a resume or an application to the roles that they had open. This Facebook ad campaign ran for just a week. It was a week-long testing period. We kind of came into it a little bit later than we would have liked. That was in February of this year, and it was immediately launched as an evergreen campaign with 3 variations that they kept in flight. This agency received more than 80,000 unique impressions and an estimated 8,900 incremental clicks per month. So we obviously had to extrapolate that data as well. Noteworthy here, the data did not show any clear differentiator by gender of the image in the ad, and further data points or testing would have been needed to uncover how gender imagery would have played a role in the effectiveness of the ad. Alex, if you'd go, yep, thank you. Here, words played a larger role in the performance overall than the imagery did, and that first line of text, "Do you have what it takes?" was the top contributor overall. The challenge emotion resonated with the audience as applicants seemed more motivated by this type of language. Find your future implied that a new career was within reach, but it might have taken a little bit longer to get to that path. So build and invest seemed like not as such a immediate immediate gratification. Alex, you want to close out the talent management use cases for us?
Happy to. Great example. I saw there was also a question while you were presenting around if Persado works with social channels like Facebook, which I think is very timely because that was an example of a Facebook campaign. Persado does have extensive experience working across other social channels as well. And I think one really interesting anecdote is that the emotions consumers feel actually differ based on the channel that they are communicated on. Receiving an SMS or a push notification elicits a totally different response than receiving an email or even hearing spoken word. And that is absolutely something that Persado works on with our customers. A couple other areas where motivation AI can be used for talent management: deadlines for open enrollment and any sort of healthcare or health insurance based campaigns, as well as benefits usage around retirement and HSA or vaccine adoption and wellness visits. So a very broad area that Persado has very rich experience working in. Our final priority is around customer loyalty, which, as we mentioned before, is a great way to not only convert new customers in a cost-effective manner, but also maximize lifetime value over time. We mentioned earlier that it is 5 to 25 times less expensive to retain a loyal customer than it is to convert a new one. Customers in loyalty programs have a 15 to 25% higher lifetime value than one-time shoppers, and companies that get it right and really have high adoption in their loyalty programs are leading their industry peers in terms of revenue growth by nearly 250%. And I think that this is, very important and timely because during, since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, loyalty has taken a pretty serious hit. In fact, consumers' willingness to try new buying behaviors and new brands has more than doubled, which means that consumers' attention span is shortening and their brand loyalty has been waning. In fact, if I take a look at the data across different cohorts or age groups within shoppers, the younger cohort is more likely to try new brands and continue to try new brands. And this is very pressing for us as marketers because these younger cohorts of Gen Z and millennials, they are going to represent not only an increasing part of the population, but an increasing part of purchasing power as well. So figuring out how to speak to them in a way that resonates with their preferences, but also motivates loyal behavior is very important for us as marketers. The other challenge that I believe pertains to this area in particular is the upcoming depreciation of cookies and pixels. So if you remember back to one of the top executive priorities of using data to communicate with a customer base effectively, two of the primary tools that marketers have in their belt, relying on pixel and cookie data, are in jeopardy of being taken away in the next couple of years. One of the beauties of Motivation AI and the data set that Persado not only creates but works with is that it doesn't rely on personally identifiable information or PII. So marketers that leverage Motivation AI are really leaning more on the impact that words and phrases and message composition have on consumers' attention versus tracking them in a personally intrusive way. So we believe that Persado in this category in general are a great hedge against PII as well as the depreciation of cookies and pixels. And the final thing that I'll say, Brianna, before you show our last case study, is that when consumers receive personalized communication across the right channel at the right time, they are 3.5x more likely to spend and spend more with brands that they feel are communicating as if they were an audience of one. So the premium of getting this correct for us as marketers is through the roof. And this is one of Persado's areas where we excel with our customers. And Brianna, I know you've got a great example of loyalty redemption that you're going to show us. So let's dive deeper into this case study.
Perfect. Thanks, Alex. As you guys can see here, this campaign encouraged bank cardholders who frequently traded in their points for travel or cash back to consider other less costly redemption options, which also helped customers get more value out of the rewards card they had. What they wanted Persado's help with was to generate content that was personalized to each customer segment they were serving in the campaign, to with the goal of driving greater engagement, with the ultimate goal of boosting those partner reward redemptions with each segment. Customers who frequently redeem points for travel, they were called the frequent traveler group. Those customers who frequently redeem points for cash back were called the frequent cash back group. Using Persado's experimentation capabilities, that platform found that the right words and phrases, in particular, different emotions and calls to action to engage customer segments, which you can see in the middle and on the right-hand side here. Excitement-focused messaging in the headline best engaged the frequent traveler group, whereas fascination was more powerful at engaging the frequent cashback segment. Similarly, the acquisition type CTA of redeem was more effective with the travel audience, but less effective with the cashback audience, who they engaged more with the navigation CTA like continue. Ultimately, personalizing content with each segment drove a 60% engagement lift with frequent travelers and a 44% engagement lift with the frequent cashback segment. Drilling down to the next level of detail, if you'd click that for me, Alex. We know the impact here matters, but so does the insights that we were able to gather. Our platform can actually tell you which part of the creative moved the needle with that particular audience when we run a full experimentation. In these two examples, what we found for both audiences was that there were two critical components when getting the email right for those segments. The emotional connection using words in the call to action, and then more specifically, 40% of the contribution across both of those campaigns came from emotion, while the CTA impact was just around 46 to 59%. Now, as you can tell, even though the elements that mattered the most were similar, the actual values for those elements were very different. So for the frequent traveler group, it was critical to build excitement using language and pairing that that was like the acquisition focused CTA versus with frequent cashback customers, we needed to focus on more of an achievement type of language. So they used a CTA that continues to navigate the customer throughout their journey. Alex, back to you to wrap it up on loyalty.
Awesome. Thank you, Brianna. And for our final area of priority, this was loyalty as driven by motivation AI. And some of the top use cases here are driving enrollment in loyalty programs, even paid loyalty programs where customers pay to subscribe to either apparel deliveries or auto ship, motivating purchases for subscriptions, like I was mentioning, repeat box purchases, accelerating next engagement and add to bag campaigns. So I want to wrap before we open it up for a couple of questions. The three main points that we wanted to drive home were that growth and profitability are definitely hard won. Talent is scarce and communicating with talent is definitely at a premium. And businesses who understand that they need to deliver the right message at the right time on the right channel are separating themselves from the pack. And Persado has great hands-on experience working with our clients in doing so. So with that, I'd love to bring Mike back in, and I'm going to stop sharing, and we'd love to open it up to Q&A.
Great. Thanks, Alex. And thanks, Brianna. That was extremely informative. And I think our audience is going to get a ton of value out of that. And, in the last just few minutes here before the top of the hour, if anyone has any last questions, I know we had quite a few come in during the actual presentation that we answered, drop them in. And if for some reason we run out of time, we'll be in touch with you with answers to those questions. But first off, I wanted to ask one or both of you, with the sort of economic headwinds and issues that you outlined in the presentation, how do you see organizations, how should they be placing emphasis on revenue growth through new sales or new client acquisition versus maintaining and strengthening customer loyalty? That's always a balancing act, but especially now with the stats you cited around how valuable it is to retain customers, how do you see that balance working out right now with the companies you work with?
Sure, I can take this one. So we see a pretty heavy emphasis on the latter, on driving loyalty, on increasing lifetime value, reducing churn. And I think that's for a couple of reasons. Number one, the cost per acquisition in a lot of cases has already been recognized. Brands have paid to acquire that customer and now are paying less, in my opinion, to retain them. The second component is we did see that brand loyalty is fleeting. So the premium for losing one of those loyal customers is actually high, because consumers are indicating a high preference to choose new brands. So I would definitely say a heavier emphasis on loyalty and retention. Not to say acquisition is not as important, but the bulk of the work that I'm seeing from an economic perspective is increasing lifetime value and decreasing churn.
Fantastic. And, as in the last 2 minutes we have here, I wanted to ask you one final question. Obviously everyone in our audience being in marketing or marketing adjacent, unfortunately, Persado is not the only technology or marketing technology that they are buying and using. How does Persado enable an organization to get more out of the investments that they've already made in marketing technology?
Brandon, you want to take this one?
Yeah. So, for example, like with a data ingestion tool or a delivery tool, we are able to take the language that they would typically either take in or send out through those tools and optimize it for overall performance. So, what they are typically doing in their workflow is just getting enhanced with higher conversion, higher revenue, or like add to carts, things like that. The language is more motivational, and so they're seeing better performance overall in the tools that they would typically be using to report on.
That's fantastic. And thank you again so much, Alex and Brianna, for sharing your expertise. This was really eye-opening, fantastic, value-driven presentation. Thank you to everyone who attended today. We're so grateful to have you in the audience of Marketing AI Institute and hearing from our wonderful partners like Persado. So with that, we will wrap it up. Thank you both again, and everyone have a fantastic day.
Thanks, Mike and Kathy. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye.